Welcome to Slash Forward. In this episode, we're going to examine a movie with a timely message in the 1979 environmental horror film Prophecy. If you prefer displaying your insides on the outside, consider subscribing to the channel. Let's get to it. We open on some hypnotic lights dancing in the dark. As they come into resolution, we recognize them to be flashlights in the woods that are accompanied by the sounds of footfalls and panting dogs tracking something. When the dogs indicate their quarry is at the bottom of a cliff, they descend. Despite the shrieking and sounds of crunching bones, the last guy decides to go down to help and ends up breaking his back among the bloody corpses of his friends and/or colleagues. The carnage fades to Maggie, a concert cellist who punishes those strings, but is distracted from her art by her pregnancy and the uncertainty of how her husband will react. Her assumption is that he won't want to keep the baby. This is due to Rob's experience as an on-call doctor for a free clinic, where he's constantly confronted by the unnecessary suffering imposed by the ruling class. In this case, a landlord who's unwilling to deal with his building's rat problem. In this low moment, he's approached by Vic, who wants to enlist him to complete an ecological survey of some sacred lands threatened by a paper company. They're in a legal stalemate with the indigenous tribe, and if they find some environmental problems, he has an opportunity to do something concrete to evoke tangible change for good in the world. And he can just think of it as being a doctor of the earth, so all his skills will transfer over. Soon, husband and wife are taking an icy plane ride out to the picturesque wilderness to do some good and hopefully fix their crumbling marriage. They meet another camping family and Mr. Isley, the representative from the paper company. On their way out, the path is blocked by John Hawkes, upholding the tradition of casting an Italian as a Native American. And vacation time abruptly ends for our young couple as the tension quickly escalates into your standard chainsaw versus axe battle, with the lumberjack coming out on top. They put this behind them and begin canoodling, but their rustic sensuality can't be maintained when Maggie broaches the topic of having children, and Rob insists that there's just too much awfulness in the world. Then they get a little scratch at the door and find themselves engaged in a mini-boss fight with a raccoon that tries to show them the true meaning of wildlife and refuses to go down until Rob snuffs it out in the fireplace. As Rob engages in his work, he's confronted by John Hawkes, who wants to convince him that his tribe is a part of the environment and the deforestation of the lumber company is manifesting in their biology. They take them to Ramona's grandfather, who regales them with forest legends and also insists that the forest guardian beast, Katahdin, is real. They laugh at crazy old grandpa until a tadpole of enormous size is fished out of the pond. So they go to burn up some runtime checking out the wood pulping operation, trying to get the lowdown on the chemicals used in the process, and we, the audience, relax for a bit as the movie turns into B-roll from a Mr. Rogers episode. Mr. Isley insists no harsh chemicals are used, and even welcomes Rob to check the water table himself. But Rob sees a trick laid out before him, recognizing that if the chemical is heavier than the water, it won't show up in the samples. After confirming mercury was used in olden times to keep algae off logs, and mercury poisoning would explain a lot of the wacky occurrences they've witnessed, along with the health issues suffered on the reservation, he opts for blood testing instead. While he unravels the mystery of Katahdin, Maggie begins to lose her mind about the implications this holds regarding her unborn baby. We then transition to our happy campers, made unhappy when Katahdin busts out from the underbrush and turns their slumber party into one of the bloodiest pillow fights on record. The police then roll up to the reservation to arrest whomever they'd like in connection with the murders, but John refuses to go quietly, pulling a reverse Kool-Aid Man into the woods to escape. Rob and crew take a helicopter out to the scene to do their own evidence collection and find the nearby trees marred by unnaturally high scrapes and a gross little flesh pouch. Maggie takes ill and wanders off for some fresh air and finds a nearby poacher's net that contains several crimes against nature, which they can't wait to get their hands on as sweet, sweet evidence. By now, the wind's picked up too much for helicoptering, so they take the specimens to Ramona's grandfather's encampment. They work to stabilize the still living freak, and Rob calls in everyone: journalists, police, sheriffs, residents, whoever they can to bear witness to what's been done here. In this intermission, Maggie gives Rob the big reveal that she's pregnant and has been eating the salmon he caught in the river. As this begins to devastate his psyche, the spectators arrive, and the cries of desperation emanating from the inside-out teddy bear are enough to even warm the icy cockles of Mr. Isley's dead black heart. He confesses to the mercury usage but claims he didn't want to do it. Nevertheless, the time has come to repay the debt, as Katahdin arrives and impresses us with his girth and agility, easily tearing through the crowd and forcing them to take to the tunnels. While the screams and grunting die down on the surface, the sheriff is the only one brave enough to check the coast, finding it unclear, and he pays a heavy price for his bravery. The next morning, they emerge to the smoldering wreckage of the camp and drag the injured to the village. Due to the remoteness and limited time, Mr. Isley attempts a redemption arc by hiking solo 6 miles to the radio tower. He makes it there, but allows himself the luxury of becoming momentarily intoxicated by nature's bounty, and is immediately sobered by nature's uncaring harshness as he's pursued by the beast, and only manages to make it 3/4 of the way under the fence. Meanwhile, John found a truck, and the gang decides to drive into town. But it's slow going and they don't make it out of the woods before nightfall. The vehicle is flipped over by Katahdin, and he slaughters several of their rank for sport, while the others make for the water. The little freak baby does work on Maggie's neck, and Grandpa hangs back to buy them some time. And it may be the mercury poisoning here, but he's feeling like he could just take on the world, resulting in him getting ragdolled. Katahdin then hesitates as the icy water is like needles on his raw exposed skin. But he loves killing so much that he fords the river, momentarily disappearing but then emerging on the other side. They attempt to barricade the doors and windows, so he bursts through the roof, and they pepper him with buckshot and arrows. Rob is eventually forced to utilize the arrows by hand to destroy the monster's face, and then he does an atomic drop into the water just for style before ensuring the job is done. The remaining survivors then fly off to live happily ever after, leaving the locals to deal with the ongoing monster menace on their own. Just a quick reminder that I have a website where you can support the channel through donations. Any donation gets you an uncensored 10-minute review of Tobe Hooper's Life Force, and any support is greatly appreciated. Prophecy is a really good monster movie. It had some of the violence toned down to get it a PG rating, but I appreciate how they tried to accommodate this reduction in terror by adding suspense and uncertainty in other areas. For instance, an excessive amount of time was spent in the tunnels listening to the victims on the surface getting chewed up. If you enjoyed the video, I'd love for you to become a part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.